There are moments in life that feel inconvenient, unexpected, even frustrating. And yet, when? Hidden inside those moments is a deeper purpose that most people overlook. One of those moments is when you wake up between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. Many people think it is random. Many people think it is a sleep disturbance. But what if it is not? What if it is a call? You see, when the early hours of the morning carry a unique atmosphere, when there is a stillness that cannot be found at any other time of the day. The noise of the world is silent. The demands of life have not yet begun. And in that silence, something powerful happens. Your spirit becomes more aware. When? Most people are too busy during the day to hear anything beyond their responsibilities. Their minds are filled with noise, pressure, and distraction. But between 3 and 5 in the morning, all of that is stripped away. When you are left alone with your thoughts, and more importantly, you are positioned to hear what you normally ignore. This is not by accident. There is a reason why you are being awakened at that specific time. It is not to scroll your phone. It is not to turn over and complain. It is an invitation into alignment, into clarity, into purpose. Because when your body is still, your spirit is more receptive. In those early hours, your mind is not yet polluted by the opinions of others. Your emotions are calm. Your environment is quiet. And in that moment, when you have access to a level of focus and awareness that is rare during the rest of the day. But here is the challenge. Most people waste it. They ignore it. They go back to sleep. They treat it like an inconvenience instead of recognizing it as an opportunity. And because of that, they miss what could have been a moment of transformation. You must understand this. When? The way you respond to small moments determines the direction of your life. When? If you are consistently being awakened at that time, you must begin to ask yourself a different question. When not, why is this happening to me? What am I being prepared for? Because preparation often comes before promotion. There are things that cannot be developed in noise. There are insights that cannot be received in chaos. When? There is discipline that cannot be built when everything is comfortable. And that is why the early hours exist. When? They are a training ground. When you choose to get up instead of going back to sleep. When you are not just waking your body, you are activating your discipline. You are strengthening your awareness. When you are telling yourself that you are willing to respond even when it is inconvenient. And that is where growth begins. Use that time intentionally. Sit in silence. Reflect. Think deeply. Write down your thoughts. Pray. Plan your day. Feed your mind with something that builds you, not something that distracts you. Because what you do in those moments will begin to shape how you think, and how you think will shape how you live. When this is where clarity is formed. This is where direction becomes visible. This is where confusion starts to fade. The world does not reward noise. It rewards clarity. And clarity is born in stillness. You do not need hours. When? You just need intention. Even 30 minutes of focused, intentional time in that early window can shift your entire mindset. When? It can give you direction when you feel lost. It can give you peace when you feel overwhelmed. It can give you confidence when you feel uncertain, but only if you use it. Because opportunity does not always come in loud, obvious ways. Sometimes it comes quietly in the form of a wake up at 3 a.m. And those who recognize it grow. When? Those who ignore it stay the same. You must decide which one you will be. When? Understand this clearly. Not everyone is given the same level of awareness. Not everyone is awakened in the same way. When you are pulled out of sleep at that hour, it is not something to fear. It is something to respect. It means there is something within you that is ready to rise. When? It means there is something ahead of you that requires preparation. It means you are being positioned, not disturbed. And if you learn how to respond to that moment with discipline, with focus, when and with intention, you will begin to notice a shift, not just in your mornings, but in your entire life. When? Because the people who master their mornings eventually master their direction. And those quiet early hours may be the very place where your next level begins. Early waking is often misunderstood because people measure everything by comfort instead of purpose. When you are suddenly awakened in the quiet hours of the morning, your first instinct may be to resist it, to question it, or to dismiss it as inconvenience. But what if that moment is not meant to disturb you, but to position you? What if it is not an interruption, but an invitation into a deeper level of awareness that most people never experience? You must understand that not every moment of your life is designed for rest. Some moments are designed for alignment. And alignment often happens when the world around you is silent. In those early hours, there is a kind of stillness that cannot be recreated during the day. It is in that stillness that your mind becomes clearer, your thoughts become sharper, and your spirit becomes more sensitive. The distractions that usually dominate your attention are absent, and for a brief moment, when you are free from the noise that clouds your judgment, that is not accidental, that is intentional. When? Because clarity requires space, and space is created in silence. When you begin to see early waking as an invitation rather than a disturbance, your response changes. Instead of frustration, you develop awareness. Instead of resistance, you choose engagement. You begin to ask yourself, what can I do with this moment? How can I use this time to grow, to reflect, to prepare? And in asking those questions, you step into a level of responsibility that separates those who drift through life from those who design it. The truth is, when many people pray for direction, but they ignore the moments when direction is made available. They ask for clarity, but they overlook the very environment where clarity is formed. That early hour is not empty. It is full of potential. When it is a space where ideas are born, where decisions gain strength, and where purpose begins to take shape. If you learn to honor that moment, to sit in it, to think in it, to listen within it, when you will begin to notice a transformation, not because the time itself is magical, but because your response to it becomes intentional. And intention is what turns ordinary moments into defining ones. When silence at dawn carries a kind of power that cannot be manufactured during the busy hours of the day. When it is a space where the noise of the world has not yet begun, where expectations have not yet taken hold, and where the mind is not yet crowded with responsibilities. In that quiet atmosphere, something shifts within you. When your thoughts slow down, your awareness deepens, and your ability to perceive truth becomes sharper. This is why clarity is not usually found in chaos. It is found in stillness. During the day, when your attention is constantly pulled in different directions, conversations, decisions, pressures, when distractions compete for your focus, leaving little room for deep reflection. But at dawn, when All of that is temporarily removed. You are not reacting, you are simply present. And in that presence, you begin to hear what is often drowned out: your inner direction, your deeper understanding, your sense of purpose. Clarity is not something that suddenly appears, it is something that is revealed when interference is removed. When silence removes that interference, it creates an environment where you can think without pressure, reflect without urgency, and observe without distraction. In those moments, answers that once seemed distant begin to feel closer. When confusion starts to dissolve, not because your situation has changed, but because your perspective has become clearer. When there is also a level of honesty that comes with silence. When everything is quiet, you cannot hide behind noise or activity. When you are confronted with your real thoughts, your real desires, and your real concerns. And while that can feel uncomfortable at first, it is necessary for growth. Because clarity requires truth. And truth is easier to recognize when nothing is competing with it. Those early moments are not just empty time. They are an opportunity to realign yourself, to think deliberately, to set direction intentionally. To prepare mentally and spiritually for what lies ahead. And when you begin your day from that place of clarity, everything else starts to follow with greater purpose. If you learn to value that silence, to sit in it rather than escape it, you will discover that it is not empty at all. It is full of insight, full of direction. And full of the kind of clarity that shapes not just your day, but your entire life. There is a reason why the most profound moments of understanding often come when everything around you becomes quiet. It is not because truth suddenly appears, but because distraction disappears. During the day, when your attention is divided across countless demands, voices, responsibilities, notifications, pressures, all competing for space in your mind. And when your mind is crowded, even the most important guidance can go unnoticed. Not because it is not there, but because you are too occupied to recognize it. When distractions are absent, something powerful happens. Your awareness sharpens. Your thoughts become more intentional. You are no longer reacting to external noise. You are finally able to listen within. And it is in that state of focused stillness that direction becomes clearer. Not always as a loud voice or dramatic realization, but often as a quiet conviction, a sense of knowing, a clarity that feels steady and undeniable. Many people expect guidance to come in extraordinary ways, but more often, it comes in simplicity. It comes when your mind is not overloaded. It comes when your environment is calm. It comes when you are willing to be still long enough to recognize it. The problem is not that guidance is absent. The problem is that distraction is constant. When you remove that distraction, even briefly, you create space for deeper awareness. You begin to notice patterns you ignored, truths you avoided, and ideas that were previously buried under noise. When you become more sensitive to what truly matters and less influenced by what does not. This is where real direction begins, not in chaos, but in clarity. There is also a level of discipline required to remain in that quiet space. Because stillness can feel uncomfortable to a mind that is used to constant stimulation. But if you learn to sit in that stillness without escaping it, you will begin to experience a different level of understanding. One that is not rushed, not forced, and not shaped by pressure. What you receive in those moments may not always be immediate or dramatic, but it will be meaningful. It will guide your decisions, influence your actions, and shape your perspective over time. When? And that is the kind of direction that lasts. Not something imposed from the outside, but something realized from within. When? When distractions are absent, you are no longer overwhelmed by everything that does not matter. You are finally positioned to recognize what does. And in that recognition, you find clarity, direction, and a sense of purpose that cannot be found in noise. There are moments when your body feels tired, heavy, when and not yet ready to move, yet something inside you is already awake. Your eyes may still want to close. When? Your body may still crave rest, but your mind is alert, your awareness is active. When? And there is a quiet sense that something is calling you forward. That tension is not random. It is the difference between physical comfort and internal purpose. And many times, when? Purpose does not wait for perfect conditions. You must understand that your body follows patterns but your purpose follows assignment. Your body seeks rest, recovery, and ease, but your purpose is driven by direction, growth, when, and timing. And sometimes those two are not aligned. When? There will be moments when your purpose begins to rise before your body feels ready to respond. In those moments, when you are faced with a decision, will you follow comfort or will you follow calling? Most people choose comfort. They turn over, go back to sleep, and silence the moment. And while there is nothing wrong with rest, when there is something powerful about recognizing when a deeper signal is present, because not every early awakening is about fatigue, some are about activation. When your purpose begins to stir, it often comes with a sense of urgency, even if you cannot fully explain it. It may show up as thoughts you cannot ignore, or ideas that keep returning, or a feeling that you should not waste that moment. That is not pressure. That is awareness. It is your inner direction stepping forward before your physical state has fully caught up. Growth often requires you to move before you feel completely ready. It requires you to act while there is still discomfort, to respond while there is still resistance, and to rise while your body still prefers to rest. This is where discipline is formed. Not when everything feels easy, but when you choose to move despite the difficulty. When? There is also a deeper truth in this: your body can be trained, but your purpose must be followed. When? The more you respond to those moments, the more your body begins to align with your direction. What once felt difficult becomes natural. What once felt like sacrifice becomes routine. And over time, when your physical state begins to support what your purpose demands. If you learn to recognize those early awakenings not as interruptions but as signals, you will begin to operate differently. When? You will stop waiting to feel ready and start responding when it matters. Because readiness is not always a feeling. Sometimes it is a decision. And the people who move in alignment with that decision, especially when it is inconvenient, are the ones who grow, who advance, and who step into levels of purpose that others continue to sleep through. There is something about the early hours that exposes the truth about a person. Not their intentions, not their desires, but their discipline. Because when the world is asleep and no one is watching, when? There is no pressure to perform and no applause to expect. There is only a decision to make. Will you rise, or will you remain where it is comfortable? And in that decision, your character is being shaped. When? Discipline is not built in moments of convenience. It is built in moments of resistance. when your body feels heavy, when your mind suggests delay, when comfort offers you an easy alternative. That is where discipline is trained. The early hours create that exact environment. They remove external motivation and leave you with internal responsibility. You are no longer driven by urgency or obligation. You are driven by choice. That is why this time is so powerful. When it forces you to confront yourself. No distractions, no excuses, no one to impress. Just you and your willingness to act. When. And every time you choose to rise in that moment, you strengthen something within you that cannot be easily broken. When you begin to develop control over your impulses, authority over your habits, and consistency in your actions. Most people wait until they feel ready, but discipline is not about feeling ready. It is about acting regardless of how you feel. And the early hours train you to do exactly that. They teach you how to move when motivation is absent, how to focus when comfort is calling, and how to commit when it would be easier to quit. Over time, those small decisions begin to compound. What starts as a single moment of resistance becomes a pattern of behavior. That pattern becomes a habit, and that habit begins to shape your identity. You no longer see yourself as someone who depends on motivation. You become someone who operates with intention. And once that shift happens, it does not stay confined to your mornings. When it carries into every area of your life. The same discipline you build in silence begins to show up in your work. Your decisions, your consistency, and your ability to follow through. Because discipline, once developed, does not limit itself to one area. It multiplies. The early hours are not just about waking up early. They are about training your mind to respond with strength instead of weakness, with action instead of delay. And the more you embrace that training ground, the more you begin to realize that discipline is not something you wait for. It is something you build. When one decision at a time, when it would have been easier to do nothing. There is a level of awareness that cannot be accessed when the mind is constantly occupied. When everything around you is loud, fast, and demanding, your attention becomes scattered, and your ability to perceive anything deeper becomes limited. You may be present physically, but internally you are divided. And in that divided state, sensitivity is reduced. Not because it is gone, but because it is overshadowed by noise. Stillness changes that. When you enter a space where there is no urgency, no distraction, and no external pressure. Your awareness begins to sharpen in a different way. You start to notice thoughts that were previously ignored. You become more aware of subtle impressions, quiet convictions, and inner nudges that do not force themselves upon you, but simply wait to be recognized. This is what sensitivity looks like. It is not loud, it is not overwhelming, it is precise, calm and steady. Spiritual sensitivity is not something that suddenly appears. It is something that becomes clearer when interference is removed. And stillness removes that interference. It creates an environment where your focus is no longer pulled in multiple directions, allowing you to become fully present in the moment. In that presence, your perception deepens. You begin to discern more clearly what aligns with your direction and what does not. There is also a refinement that happens in stillness. Your thoughts slow down, your reactions become less impulsive, and your awareness becomes more intentional. You are no longer rushing to respond, you are learning to observe. And in observation, understanding grows. You begin to distinguish between what is temporary and what is meaningful. Between what is noise and what is guidance. Many people struggle to hear or sense anything beyond the surface because they never allow themselves to be still long enough. They fill every moment with activity, every silence with distraction, and every pause with something external. But sensitivity requires space. It requires moments where you are not consuming, not reacting, not rushing, just present. The more you practice being still, the more refined your awareness becomes. What once felt unclear starts to make sense. What once felt distant begins to feel closer. And over time, you develop a deeper connection to your inner direction. Not because something new was added, but because something unnecessary was removed. Stillness is not empty. It is full of clarity, full of awareness, and full of the kind of sensitivity that allows you to recognize what truly matters. And when you learn to value that space, you begin to operate with a level of understanding that cannot be reached in noise. There is a powerful principle that governs the flow of your life. And it is this: how you begin determines how you continue. The early hours of the morning are not just the start of your day. They are the foundation upon which everything else is built. Before the world makes demands on you, before distractions begin to compete for your attention, you are given a window of control. And what you choose to do in that window has a direct influence on everything that follows. When you wake up and immediately give your attention to noise, urgency, or distraction, your mind becomes reactive. You spend the rest of the day responding instead of leading. But when you take control of those first moments, when you choose to be intentional, to be focused, to be aware, you set a different tone. You move from reaction to direction. You are no longer chasing the day. You are guiding it. The mind in the morning is highly impressionable. It absorbs quickly, it processes deeply, and it sets patterns that carry throughout the day. If your first thoughts are scattered, your actions will follow that pattern. If your first actions are intentional, your decisions will begin to align with that intention. This is why the morning is so critical. It is not just about time, it is about influence. What you think about at dawn shapes your mindset. What you focus on shapes your priorities. What you do shapes your behavior. And behavior, repeated consistently, becomes your identity. So the question is not whether your morning matters. The question is what kind of direction you are setting before the day even begins. There is also a sense of momentum that is created in those early hours. When you start your day with clarity, with purpose, and with discipline, you carry that energy forward. Your decisions become sharper. Your actions become more aligned. You waste less time and you move with greater intention. But when your morning begins with confusion, delay, or distraction, that same lack of structure follows you, making everything feel more difficult than it needs to be. Most people underestimate the power of a small beginning. They think the real work happens later, during the busy hours. But the truth is, the direction is already set before those hours arrive. The early moments are where your focus is established, where your mindset is formed, and where your priorities are defined. If you learn to guard that time, to use it deliberately, and to approach it with purpose, you will begin to notice a shift, not just in your mornings, but in your entire day. Because the way you start is not just a moment, it is a signal. It tells your mind how to operate, your body how to respond, and your life how to move forward. And once that signal is set, everything else begins to follow it. There is a tendency in human nature to look for big moments, dramatic signs, and undeniable clarity before taking action. When? People often wait for something obvious, something that feels significant enough to justify their response. But growth, direction, and deeper understanding are rarely built in those large, visible moments. They are developed in the small, quiet decisions that most people overlook. Obedience in small moments is not about the size of the action, when it is about the posture of your mind. It is the willingness to respond when something within you prompts you, even when it seems minor, even when it feels inconvenient, even when there is no immediate reward. When? It is choosing to act on what you sense rather than waiting for something bigger to confirm it. What many people fail to realize is that small moments are often tests of readiness. When? They reveal whether you are prepared to handle greater responsibility. Because if you cannot respond when the demand is small, you will struggle when the demand becomes greater. Discipline, awareness, when? And consistency are not built suddenly. They are developed gradually through repeated responses to simple opportunities. When you begin to honor those small moments, something begins to shift. Your awareness becomes sharper. Your sensitivity increases. You start to recognize patterns, connections, and insights that were previously invisible to you. Not because they were not there, but because you were not yet aligned to see them. Obedience creates alignment. When? And alignment opens the door to deeper understanding. There is also a trust that is built through consistency. Each time you respond correctly to a small prompting, you strengthen your confidence in your direction. You become less hesitant, less uncertain, and more decisive over time. This builds a level of clarity that allows you to move forward with greater assurance, even when the path is not fully visible. When? Greater revelation does not come to those who are waiting for it passively. It comes to those who are actively engaged, who are willing to move step by step, even when the steps seem small. Because every small act of obedience positions you for something more. It prepares your mindset, strengthens your discipline, when and refines your awareness. If you learn to take those small moments seriously, to treat them as meaningful rather than insignificant, you will begin to experience a different level of growth. What once felt unclear will begin to unfold. What once felt distant will begin to come into focus. And you will realize that the bigger picture was never hidden. It was simply revealed one small, faithful step at a time. When there is a unique window in the early hours of the morning where the mind operates differently than at any other time of the day. When it is not yet crowded with responsibilities, not yet influenced by conversations, not yet shaped by external pressures. When in that state it is open, receptive, and highly impressionable. When what enters your mind during those moments does not just pass through. It settles, it takes root. When? And it begins to shape your thinking in a deeper way. Throughout the day, your mind is constantly filtering information. It becomes selective, defensive, and sometimes overwhelmed. But in the early hours, those filters are lowered. Your thoughts are quieter, your awareness is clearer, and your ability to absorb ideas is heightened. When? This is why what you expose yourself to in that time carries more weight than you may realize. When it does not just influence your mood, it begins to define your direction. When, if your first engagement in the morning is with distraction, negativity, or confusion, your mind begins to organize itself around that pattern. Your thoughts become scattered, your focus weakens. When? And your decisions start to reflect that lack of clarity. But if you choose to fill that space with intention, with reflection, with purposeful thinking, with something that strengthens your mindset, you begin to program your day in a completely different way. The early hours are not just a beginning, they are a blueprint. They set the tone for how you interpret situations, how you respond to challenges, and how you carry yourself throughout the day. When? Because once your mind adopts a certain direction in the morning, it tends to continue along that path. It builds momentum, and that momentum influences your behavior. Because preparation always precedes elevation. When? And those early hours may be the very place where you are being shaped for what you are about to carry. When? There comes a point where knowledge is no longer enough, where understanding must turn into action. When? You have heard the principles, you have recognized the patterns. When? And now you are faced with a decision that will quietly define your future. Will you treat these moments as ordinary, or will you recognize them as opportunities to rise? Because your life will not change by what you know. It will change by what you consistently do. Every early awakening, every moment of stillness, every quiet prompting carries a question within it. Are you willing to respond? Not when it is easy, not when it is convenient, but when it requires discipline, awareness, and intention. That is where transformation begins. Not in grand events, but in small, repeated decisions that align you with something greater.